This video is now in session, and today let's go over the redistricting map. So there has been a lot of changes since we have last spoken about this issue, and it makes sense because we are now in the thick of it. We are now in the depths of the redistricting cycle. So now we have a bunch of maps that are being produced, and there have been many more states that have introduced maps. So let's go over all of them in this video. So first we have Washington. Washington, there are 4 maps. One produced by a Democrat, two Democratic plans and 2 Republican plans, two from the House, 2 from the Senate, and this is what the maps have come up with. So we can see here that it's either break even with Democratic leans and safes, or an advantage of 2 for the Democratic Party. In the Democratic House plan, you have Seattle getting completely entrenched in 1 seat in a D+72 district by Pramila Jayapal, and then you have 2 Seattle suburb areas. This district goes out to the more rural areas of Seattle, and then this area gets into the suburban area of Seattle in order to make this seat D+10. If this section of Washington's 8th district was not in this plan, then Washington's 8th district would be Republican. You also have Washington's 2nd district, which gets the Democratic areas of the Washington coast, and then some parts of the North Cascades region. Here you have the Olympia region, which encompasses half of Tacoma with the rest of Olympia, and then here the 10th district. This is the other half of Tacoma. Meanwhile, the 3 Republican seats largely stay the same. In fact, if you look at the boundaries between the Democratic seats and the Republican seats, they haven't changed at all, except for maybe this small area. But besides that, there's not really much of a change. You can see here that Jaime Herrera Butler, her seat goes from R+10 to R+11. Meanwhile, this is R+25 and 16. Here is 25 and 16 as well. So not much of a change there. If we compare this to the old map for the Democratic side, it gets a little bit more Democratic because this seat, which is competitive, will no longer be competitive in this new map. If we go back to Washington, and then if we look at the Republican House's plan, you can see that the Republicans automatically gain 1 seat from Kim Schreier's seat in Washington's 8th district, and this is done by basically taking the rural areas of Seattle, like the very greater suburbs of Seattle and Tacoma, and then combining it with the rural areas of, I believe this is Mount Rainier. And then here, this seat, Washington's 1st district, gets a lot more competitive. This is done by combining the Democratic areas of Bellingham with the rural Republican areas of Washington. Meanwhile, Jaime Herrera Butler's seat, as well as the other 2 seats, the other 2 current Republican seats, they don't have much of a difference. And you can see that in this map, the Democrats are packed into the Seattle urban area. So D+28, D+44, D+67, and D+24 compared to here, D+20, 67, 43, and 67, 43. So that's how the Republican House does it. If we look at the Democratic Senate, not much has changed here either, except for this district. Actually a lot, I guess you could say a lot greater stuff has happened in the Democratic Senate plan compared to the Democratic House plan, but here you have Washington's 5th district. It gets a lot more Democratic from R+16 to R+13, so that's in likely territory. The rest of the seats, you can see here that the 1st district relatively stays the same as the Democratic House plan, and largely this area stays the same as the Democratic House, just maybe a little bit of difference in the lines. In the Republican Senate plan, instead of having one seat automatically go to the Republican Party, that seat will become competitive, and that is through Washington's 6th District. What this does is that it no longer touches Tacoma in any way, and instead it gets the competitive areas near Astoria, Oregon, and then you also have Olympia there. And then R plus 8th District, this isn't much of a change from the House Republican plan, but basically it just gets the Republican votes here and then combines it with the more Democratic-leaning votes in the western portion. Meanwhile, Jamie Herrera Butler seat gets a little bit more compact, and then the rest of the seats, they follow along the Seattle coast. Which map is likely to happen? It's either going to be the Democratic House or Senate plan. More likely, the Democratic, it's hard to say which one specifically will get passed, but the Democrats would be more favorable to pass in the Senate plan, primarily because this seat goes from R plus 16 to R plus 13. The rest of the seats, they don't have much of a change. D plus 8 is the narrowest margin that is available. Meanwhile, in the Democratic House plan, this is D plus 9, so there's really not that much of a difference. So that's Washington. Now let's go over to Montana. Montana has a few maps proposed. They gained districts, so now they have 2 districts. And you can see there are a bunch of ways to draw one line that splits 2 different districts. And you can see here that it ranges from 2 safe Republican seats to 1 competitive seat. If we look at the 2 safe Republican seats here, you can see that Missoula and that half of these Montanan small cities are in the 2nd district, the other half in the 1st district, including Bozeman. The Bozeman area, I believe, is in the 1st district, and then Missoula, Kalispell, and possibly Helena is in the 2nd district. So that's that map. They largely are the same, except for maybe between the 2 Republican seats. But if we look at the competitive seats, you can see here that this district that Rosendale is in, it becomes a lot more competitive because this district encases almost every single big city in, or I guess small city in Montana, because none of the cities in Montana are that large. But you have Missoula, Helena, Butte, Bozeman, and half of Billings that are put in Montana's 1st district. Meanwhile, the 2nd district is R plus 37, and this has the median seat of R plus 0, so it's a pretty even map. It doesn't really waste that many votes. And then if you look at the efficiency gap, this actually heavily favors the Democratic Party, primarily because this district is very competitive and is completely attainable for a Democrat to have. You can look at this seat, that's R plus 4, and this is also pretty even with the partisanship of Montana. And most likely the competitive seats, one of the proposals that has a competitive seat will be passed because it is by Montana's because Montana does have an independent redistricting commission. In Utah, we have 6 maps proposed. They propose it by colors, and this is actually pretty interesting because this map does give the ability for the Democrats to have a safe seat. If we look at the best scenario for the Democratic Party, it would be Orange Plan 3-3. Here you can see that this seat is D plus 15, and then the rest of the seats are safe Republican. But if this map does get passed, which won't get passed, but if it does get passed, then Chris Stewart would most likely be overturned by a Democratic challenger. And then we also have other maps that include a Democrat, but most likely, even though Utah does have an independent redistricting commission, the governor and the state legislature, or I guess the Utah Republican Party, can overrule that and create their own map, and most likely this kind of map will get produced, which is similar to the map we had 10 years ago, which is that this district gets a more Republican from this iteration, since it goes further into the rural areas of Utah, and then it also goes a little bit back. It doesn't have as many suburban areas of Salt Lake City, and then Chris Stewart's seat would get a little bit more of that, with Blake Moore's seat also getting more of Salt Lake City, and that's how you have R plus 15, R plus 33, and then R plus 24, or actually this is R plus 16, but all of these seats are safe, and that will most likely be the map that is passed. Other states, Arizona, this one's important. This is a preliminary map by the ARC, the Arizona Redistricting Commission, and this one is okay for the Democratic Party. It's not really the best, but it's what they have, what they might have to deal with. So in this new map, you can see that Arizona's 2nd district becomes a lot more Republican, and this is because this seat was mainly here for VRA purposes for Native Americans. If we go to the 2nd district, I mean, I guess it's not here anymore, but like this district was mainly to encompass the Native American population of Arizona, and then combine that with the Phoenix area to create a safe seat. But now in this new map, Paul Gosar and Tom O'Halloran are now put in the same seat. This seat is also has an incumbent, and that's because you can see that this district goes all the way to the Phoenix area. This map is actually a lot more compact than the old map, but at the same time it favors Republicans a little bit more because it is wasting Democratic votes in the Phoenix area. It is, for example, Arizona's 5th district, and then Arizona's 7th district. This district would be even under the new scenario, and basically Arizona's 2nd district and Arizona's 3rd district would kind of get switched in terms of its partisanship. This is R plus 22. This is D plus 22 to D plus 7. This is D plus 2 to now even in partisanship because it's taken the suburbs of Tucson and Phoenix and combining it with some Democratic votes in Pima County and this is either Pima or Yuma County, I forgot, but it's combining that with the Republican votes. So that's Arizona. You also have this seat right here, which becomes D plus 1. So basically it's a map that kind of overturns every single incumbent, besides maybe a few. Paul Gosar would most likely win this seat. So Tom O'Halloran would be overturned. Arizona's 5th district, there is no incumbent. Ann Kirkpatrick already said she was not going to run for re-election. Val Grijalva will most likely have a very tough race ahead of him. And then David Schweikert might get overturned. So that's the Arizona map. There's still more maps that should be coming from Arizona, but that's some of them so far. In this map, in this state, I mean, this is New Mexico. These maps largely follow last I guess cycles maps. Here this map becomes a little bit more Republican, since Mexico's 2nd district encompasses this area of northern New Mexico, which is Republican leaning. But then you also have some interesting maps like Congressional Concept H. And in this map, basically what you have is Yvette Harrell's seat becomes a lot more competitive than what it used to be. This was R plus 14 to D plus 1, which means that she will most likely have a tough election ahead of her. And the reason why this map is most likely to get passed is because even though New Mexico has an independent redistricting committee, that can be overturned by the state of New Mexico, and thus the Democrats can potentially gain one seat. But it's actually surprising that that the Democrats, or I guess the Independent Redistricting Committee, did not go further than this, because they could have made this seat into maybe D plus 5 by taking some of the votes from Melanie Stansbury's seat. But nonetheless, that's how you get 3 Democratic seats in New Mexico. And then we also have Georgia. Georgia we talked about before. Michigan, there are a few more maps that have been produced. It's a lot of maps. And it just shows how many ways you can draw the seats. But again, it's largely not super favorable for the Democratic Party. If we go to the best map for the Democrats, it most likely would come from this map right here, the 18th proposal, since it wastes the least amount of Democratic seats. If we look at this map right here, this wastes the most amount of Democratic seats. So the 18th proposal is the most Democratic so far. They might produce more Democratic maps because generally speaking, if we have 18 maps, then they might produce more maps. But in this map, you can see it's not even that favorable for the Democrats, because for the Democrats to win the majority in Michigan's delegation, they would have to win both of the competitive seats right here, and that's pretty hard for the Democrats to do in an increasingly Republican state. If we looked at the map before, the reason why Democrats were able to have an even delegation was because of Alyssa Slotkin. Her seat is R+6, yet she was able to win in the 2020 election. If we look at this map is the best that the Democrats can ask so far. Daniel Kildee's seat becomes a little bit more Republican by 3 points. Alyssa Slotkin's seat actually becomes better for her because it goes from R+6 to R+4. And then you also have a few seats in the Detroit area. You have these 2 seats, Haley Stevens and Andy Levin. Both of those seats are relatively the same. Haley Stevens' seat actually gets a little bit more Democratic. And then the final thing is that in Michigan's 4th district, Peter Mayer and Fred Upton stay in the same position. Meanwhile, in Michigan's 13th district, this is where the 2 incumbents are combined. If we look at previous maps, including the first proposal, you can see here that there should be a map where Peter Mayer is combined. There should be a map somewhere here where Peter Mayer and I believe Fred Upton's districts are combined into one district, but basically Michigan is losing a district, so no matter what happens, they will have to combine at least 2 incumbents into one district. So that's the updates that are happening to this map. Oh, there's also Hawaii. There's not really much that's happening with Hawaii. It's either the current map that we have here, which is the same as last cycle's maps, or the alternative map, which we have here. Really, there's not much of a change, but that's what's at stake for redistricting as of now. And just a note, we are going to be taking a break for 2 weeks, primarily because we have a lot of work to do these days. But if there is a lot of redistricting news happening, we will make a few videos along those times, and we will definitely report on the 2021 elections happening in Virginia and as well as in New Jersey. So that's the end of this video. Hope you enjoyed it. This video is now adjourned, and I'll see you in the next one.